The Chat Trap.
Hey guys, it's Sarah right here on the Chat Trap, and we're talking right now about the anti-vax conspiracy because there seems to be conspiracy theories everywhere. And I thought now would be the best time to talk about these conspiracy theories and actually tell you about why you probably shouldn't believe in them. And I'm here to actually clarify all your doubts about all these conspiracy theories and try to make sure that you are okay and you are doing what you're supposed to be doing, okay? Because there's a lot of conspiracy theories right now, and especially because these vaccination drives are happening everywhere. We're all really confused, and sometimes you can even not want to get vaccinated. You might be having fears about vaccination, and that's why I'm here right here on the Chat Trap to talk to you about all of that and make sure that you know what you should be doing and that I am here to educate you on it. Okay, and this is the Chat Trap, and I'm Sarah. If you have any questions, messages, anything that you want to share with us, any opinions that you want me to share with everyone, you can text me on 07852473473, and I will be here to answer all of it and even tell everyone about your opinion, and I can give you my opinion, and we can even start a whole other conversation about it right now. Okay, so if you have any of those messages, questions, make sure you text me on that number. Okay, so I knew when I saw this that I had to talk about this because it's the anti-vax conspiracy. There's conspiracy theories everywhere and all the time about everything, okay? So I thought it's time to debunk some of these conspiracies and actually help you have a clear understanding of what you should do and what you shouldn't, okay? Now, obviously, we need to talk about this because right now there's a lot of misinformation everywhere. And I'm not talking only about the United Kingdom. I'm talking about all over the world, right? Wherever it is, there is a lot of misinformation. And that's why there's fact checkers on social media like Instagram, Facebook, and even Twitter doesn't let you post things if you're constantly posting false information, right? So those are things that we need to talk about. Those are things that's really important when we're talking about conspiracy theories, and that's something we need to talk about. Okay, so let's get right into it because I'm so excited to get into it, and I have so many things to tell you about this anti-vax conspiracies as well. So super excited to get into that. Now, there are different conspiracy theories about COVID-19. There's different conspiracy theories about these vaccines, and one of the biggest issues that a lot of countries and a lot of governments had to deal with was all this misinformation. Like, how are we possibly going to deal with this much misinformation? How are we going to get people to believe that this is not true, that this is not realistic, and how we're going to make people understand that they need to do what's right, not just for themselves but for their families as well, and to make sure not to put the rest of the world in danger. Because the thing about conspiracy theories and the thing about anti-vax movements is that it can actually put a lot of people at risk, and that is something that we need to be discussing today as well. So that's what we'll be doing here on the Chat Trap, and I'm super excited to do that. But let's talk about the current situation, right? One of the biggest issues that we had at the beginning of the pandemic was actually figuring out if we could get vaccinations fast enough, and if we could make it successful and basically get us out of this mess that we're in right now. And that was one of the biggest questions. How long would it take for us to test out these vaccines? How long would it take for us to understand how this works? How long would it take for us to actually make vaccines safe? And how long is it before we can actually give vaccines to all over the world? And what I mean when I say that is there's a lot of vaccine inequality right now, especially with when it comes to poor countries, when it comes to countries that are financially struggling. And I know right now everyone is, because of the economic situation in countries everywhere, and that is expected obviously because we're in the middle of a pandemic, so obviously those things are expected, right? So when it comes to things like that, we need to make sure that all those questions are answered, that all those things are mentioned, and because of that is what we'll be talking about today. So earlier I was talking about vaccines, and earlier I was talking about if we were, when we had all these uncertainties, when we had all these doubts about whether we could produce vaccines fast enough and whether those vaccines would be effective, and how long it would be before the whole world was finally vaccinated. Now we don't none of those fears, but those fears are actually a little bit less right now, because we found vaccines and we know that it is happening, and it might and it is going to be quite successful, right? And what I mean when I say that is, because we found vaccines, because there are vaccination drives happening everywhere in the world, we know that it is going to be effective. We know that we will eventually vaccinate the entire world, and then we can prevent another outbreak like this, because what vaccinations do is, obviously, it helps you reduce, or rather increase your immunity and reduce your chances of getting the sickness. And even if you do get the sickness, then what it will probably do is it'll help your body deal with it better, because that's very important when we're facing a new virus that we don't have any idea about, because even though the virus has been there for 2 years, but still there are still a lot of research that is being conducted to figure out what are the lasting effects of COVID. Because I was reading an article yesterday, and it said even after you're completely cured of COVID, you can still have some of its symptoms for at least 12 weeks after you get the disease, and that is the least, right? So sometimes it could even stretch out to even a year. You could have those some of the COVID symptoms even a year after you got cured from the disease. Okay, so that is very important, and that's why I thought we need to tackle all of these things about conspiracy theories, about anti-vaccination, and all of the misinformation that is currently there. So obviously a lot of people are unsure about getting vaccinated. A lot of people are trying to figure out if that's the correct thing to do, and that's completely normal. It's completely normal for you to have these doubts about getting vaccinated, because it can be scary, right? And this is a new pandemic. There's a lot of doubts about whether it's safe, whether it has any side effects, whether it will actually help us, and so many different questions for different people. And especially, these questions differ from different communities, because obviously people from different ethnic communities, people who are from who are from a different ethnicity, there's a diverse range, and there's a diverse amount of people in society today. So obviously you need to understand that people from other countries, people who come from different ethnicities as well, have different genetic conditions in their bodies, because when you live in the tropical part of the world versus when you live in a cold part of the world, your genes are wired differently. So obviously there's a lot of questions when it comes to things like that, and it's completely normal, because it's very human. It's a very human thing to do. It's completely normal for you to be confused, or for you to be unsure, or for you to want more answers, and that is what the government is currently trying to provide as well. They're trying to provide more answers. They're trying to make sure everyone is going to get vaccinated, and they're trying to clear out these doubts as much as they can. So let's get into conspiracy theories. And now I have to mention this. The number one place when it comes to conspiracy theories is definitely the United States, because there was a lot of conspiracy theories, and we saw that the past few weeks, even with the former president himself, saying a lot of things that weren't necessarily true. And what I mean when I say this was things like how COVID-19 was a hoax virus, or even the fact that it was deliberately manufactured to wage war on people, which is not really true, right? A lot of these things were being spread, and especially given the fact that even famous people, like some celebrities, also constantly promote these unrealistic or not necessarily correct things, because there's a lot of misinformation that is promoted by celebrities as well. Obviously a lot of people thought that this was real. A lot of people believed in some of these conspiracy theories, and obviously because of that, it was very, very hard to sort of deal with it, right? But currently, governments all around the world are trying to tackle it, and they're trying to get everyone to have a clear mind, get everyone to obviously understand how bad it is to get the disease, and how much more safer you're with the vaccine. So obviously those things are what governments around the world are trying to do. And if I were to mention a few other conspiracy theories, I'm also talking about things like how drinking, sanitizer would essentially make you immune to the disease, or even, asking people to constantly take doses of hydroxychloroquine wasn't necessarily going to help. Right now, I'm talking about all of those because all of those were conspiracy theories, and you need to make sure that when you are among the population, when you're talking to people, that you don't spread misinformation, because it gets really hard to the government and even the health sector to bring it back to normal, and to sort of put out these fires that are started because of misinformation. So it's very important that we talk about this. So that's what we're going to do right now. Now, when it comes to these conspiracy theories, and when it comes to anti-vaccination, when it comes to anti-vaxxers and that whole movement, what needs to be understood is that these things have actually existed for a really long time. It's not new, and it's not something that just happened because of the pandemic. Those things have existed for a really long time, and and something I noticed was, as soon as COVID started, there was so much of misinformation. There was so much of misinformation. There was so much of these conspiracy theories, and there were so many people giving their opinions. And one thing I've seen, when I'm on social media and I'm scrolling down, is how you have these different people, especially like your relatives, sending you a lot of misinformation. Things like steaming or inhaling steam, or even drinking hot water, things like that, that helps you actually with COVID, and actually real. Now, those are things that people just say for the sake of saying, and we need to understand that sometimes conspiracy theories, sometimes misinformation is spread, or it's told to other people simply because it can be something that you can earn money out of. By spreading misinformation, you can earn money. Maybe some people just like to do it. Maybe some people just want to confuse people. There are all kinds of people out there. Okay, I mean, you would probably just want to confuse people. You would probably just want to help people. There are different motives as to why people do that. But before I get into that, it's time for me to actually head into a small break, and I will get back to you on the anti-vax conspiracy and everything that we can do and everything that we need to talk about. We'll be back on that, but right now it's time to get into a small break.
Again. But now, if you say to a child, if I went up to a child and said, you've had one to forget, God, there'd be an inquest. An inquest. They'd ask me, why did you reject my son? Well, I haven't rejected your son.
I want to talk about, how the generation gap, has how much it's changed, especially when you check the youth nowadays in comparison, to people back in the day.
I'd say when I was younger, it was more disciplined. Not now.
In comparison to now.
Not at all. Not now. The way things are nowadays, the younger generation, you seem that they can't accept the word no. If that makes sense.
They can't accept rejection, essentially, is all you're trying to say.
Yeah, they can't accept the word no. So if you, how did I do? Or you didn't do very well, and they get upset, And when I was a youngster, my father used to say to me, because I used to be sport mad when I was very young. Well, I still am sport mad, but like participating in different sports. And if I had a bad game, for example, my dad say to me, "You had one to forget." That's it.
Your dad sounds like a smart guy. I mean, yeah, that's the real fact of the matter. Yeah.
He'd say to me, "You had one to forget. Get over it," and that was it. So I dust myself down and do it again. But now, if you say to a child, if I went up to a child and said, "You've had one to forget," God, there'd be an inquest. An inquest. They'd ask me, why did you reject my son? Well, I haven't rejected your son. Or daughter. I've just told them that they need to buck their ideas up.
That's the truth right there. I mean, if you think about it, if you check the generations, like right now in the US as well, I've seen a lot of these things as well. In the UK, you get medals for participation. But what's the point? What are you trying to? Yeah, what's the point? Either you win or you lose. People are so afraid to put that whole notion of losing. When it comes to right now, the generation gap is just crazy. How much a lot has changed. Social media has taken control of our lives, and we don't even realize it anymore. We're crippled because of it.
That's absolutely right, Nick. Because, as you said, nowadays it seems that you get rewarded for failure. For the life of me, Nick, I can't get my head around that. Perhaps I'm just getting old and morbid. I don't know. I just can't get my head around how you could be rewarded for failure.
Hey, it's your girl Sarah right here on the Chat Trap, and we were obviously talking about the various conspiracy theories and the anti-vaccination efforts, or the anti-vaxxers, to put it simply, and how that's actually affecting a lot of us right now, and how it's affecting the government in terms of keeping their population safe, and also in terms of vaccinating people and trying to make sure that everyone is safe from the pandemic, or rather the COVID-19 virus. Okay, so that's what I'm talking about, and I'm super excited to be here. You're hanging with me, Sarah, and if you have any messages, any thoughts, any questions that you want to ask, you can text me on 07852473473, and we can have a little chat, or I can even share your opinion on on what I'm currently talking. And if there's something else you want me to talk about, well, make sure you text me again on that same number, and we can have a discussion about it. Now, in addition to that, if there's anything else that you want me to say, anything else you want me to speak, do the same. And while you're at it, you can also check out our socials: Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and YouTube, and make sure you follow those as well on Relaks Radio, because and also TikTok as well, because we have so much of fun content for you. So make sure you follow that, and you will be really happy, because Relaks Radio is somewhere where you can talk about anything and everything. Okay, and when I say that, I am talking about finance, I'm talking about entertainment, gossip, news, lifestyle, whatever it is, we will be talking about it right here on Relaks Radio. So make sure you stay tuned for that, right? But earlier I was talking about all these conspiracy theories that were there, and how it has helped to spread a lot of misinformation, and why we need to change that. And change the situation right now, because we need to help our governments to make sure that our entire populations are vaccinated, and why we need to make sure that people are vaccinated as well, so that we can save our families and our loved ones, and keep everyone we care about, keep everyone we care about, and keep everyone who's close to us safe. Okay, so that's what yeah, that's what we were talking about. Okay, but now let's talk about conspiracy theories and how they work. So if you aren't too sure about how conspiracy theories work or how they function, now I was telling you earlier how these conspiracy theories started soon after the first news about COVID was ever broadcasted on news, on radio stations, whatever it was, whatever it is. When this was first broadcasted, obviously, there was a lot of misinformation spreading. There were so many people saying, it doesn't exist. It was deliberately manufactured to create, or rather to wage war between people, and that's why it was created, and that's why that's why it happened, and all of that, right? So obviously, that is when it all started, but it doesn't mean that anti-vaxxers and all these conspiracy theories didn't exist before the pandemic. It's always important to understand that conspiracy theories, anti-vaccination, anti-vaxxers, or the effort to not vaccinate yourself, to be against vaccines, has existed for a really, really long time. And this is not the first time we're hearing about it. But obviously, there has been a surge of the way in which these things were presented. There has been a surge in terms of there has been a surge in terms of how things have changed, and how much of misinformation it is spreading, simply because of the fact that a lot of people have access to social media. So it's a very easy way to spread. It's a very easy way to actually spread these misinformation, these rumors, whatever it is that is currently happening in and around the world. Okay, so that's what it is. But if I were to simply put what conspiracy theories are, it's basically when people attempt to explain these significant events as evil acts that are done by secret and powerful groups. Okay, and that is, just to simply put it, there's a whole lot of there's a whole lot of analysis, and there's a whole lot of ideas behind it. But just to simplify things and not make life complicated, because it's already complicated, I will just say it like that. So it's basically when you try to pretend, or when you believe, or when you try to make people believe that whatever current situation we're going through, or even if it's significant historical events, that those things were actually caused by these secret groups that are really powerful, and miraculously exist in the world. So that's what that is. Now, psychologists actually tried, or rather they were attempting, or they were trying to explain to people as to why, or as to why these conspiracy theories existed, and why people believe them so easily. Because if people are going to believe it so easily, if people are so susceptible to it, you start questioning it, right? Why is it so easy for you to why is it so easy for you to actually believe these things? Why is it everywhere? And if it's so wrong, then why aren't people doing, or rather, why aren't companies or social media companies actually doing something about it, and letting all this fake information or misinformation spread? So obviously because of those things, psychologists actually think that there are three reasons as to why people believe in conspiracy theories. And the first one is, it's something called epistemic needs, where we as humans, we actually want a lot of knowledge, and that's why we're always curious about what's happening. We want to know everything. That's why we even gossip, because we want to know everything. So obviously, because humans have this desire, they have this need to satisfy their curiosity, and because they want to avoid uncertainty, they actually start believing in these conspiracy theories. And that's actually because they want, or rather they look for these patterns within these conspiracy theories, patterns and meanings that sometimes don't necessarily exist. They tend to imagine these things and pretend like it exists, simply because it helps them think that they're finally aware of something, or it helps them think that they've finally managed to satisfy their curiosity. So that's what that is about. And another thing, or rather another reason as to why psychologists believe people believe in conspiracy theories, is because of something called existential needs. And when I say existential, you know what I mean. It's basically things like our security, our sense of control. Now, obviously, when there's a pandemic, obviously, when so many things are happening which we can't control, we then obviously need to be able to have a sense of security. We need to be able to have a sense of understanding. We need to be able to understand about what's happening, right? So for us to have that sense of security, for us to have that sense of understanding, for us to have that sense of control, we need to, have a certain pattern. We need to have a certain theory as to why it's happening. And that makes a lot of sense as to why people believe in conspiracy theories. When you're constantly, when your world is in this huge mess, when you're trying to make sense of what's happening, and you especially feel like you've lost control, you tend to believe conspiracy theories. And obviously, I'm not talking about only people who believe in conspiracy theories. Even we, even other people who aren't anti-vaxxers, or people who don't necessarily support these conspiracy theories, are actually having a really hard time trying to make sense of what's happening. They're having a really hard time trying to restore the sense of security and the sense of control, because to be quite honest, the world has spun out of control the past 2 years. It's almost 2 years since the pandemic started, but it has spun out of control. People are so confused, people don't know what to do. And so to establish the sense of security, to establish that sense of control, obviously you need to start believing in something that seems very realistic to you. So obviously you would go for the easiest thing, and that is these conspiracy theories that are freely existing on social media, that anyone can formulate and that anyone can spread. So obviously that is why another reason why psychologists believe that people are so susceptible to conspiracy theories. Now, another reason as to why people believe in conspiracy theories is because of our social needs. And this is something that's very relatable, or this is something that a lot of us can experience simply because of the fact that a lot of us want to hold ourselves in positive regard. And what I mean when I say this is that a lot of people don't want to be wrong. We don't like being wrong. We always want to be right. And that's a very human thing. You always want to think you're right. You always want to feel like you're doing the right thing. You want to make sure that you are always the right one, and you want people to appreciate and look at you in a positive light. You don't want people to think you're ever wrong, right? That's what even as a world leader, that's what it is about. It's about holding that sense of power. It's about making sure you're always saying the right thing so people will believe you and support you. That's what it is. So obviously, when people want to hold themselves in a positive light, uh, when they want people to see them as people who know what they're doing, or sometimes even when people want to be unique, they tend to believe in these conspiracy theories. And I know that sounds really ridiculous, because why would you believe in conspiracy theories just to be unique when there are so many other things that you can do or you can like to make yourself unique, right? But the thing is that that's what it is. And people do these things simply because of the reasons that I just mentioned. They want to make sure that they have this sense of security, that their knowledge is actually used, that they are aware of what's happening, and that they want to be unique, and that's why they actually do this. But the thing is, even though people are so ready to believe it, even though people so easily believe it, conspiracy theories have a lot of consequences. And conspiracy theories is actually linked to a lot of other things, like, for example, climate denial, or even vaccine refusal, and other things also, like violence, crime, and prejudice. And the best way to actually explain this to you is, remember when the Paris Agreement was happening, and I'm talking about climate change, obviously. The Paris Agreement was happening in terms of climate change, when President Donald Trump didn't want to sign it, simply because he said climate change doesn't exist. Now the thing is, when you are the president of a country, or when you are a huge celebrity, that means you have a lot of influence. So whatever you say, people will believe you. And that's why it's very important that world leaders, that celebrities actually make sure they spread, or rather they talk about the right thing, because they have a lot of fans, they have a lot of people who support them. So the moment you say something wrong, they will be ardent believers of whatever you say. And that's how, susceptible people are. That's how easy it is to convince someone. That's how easy it is to, influence someone's mind and tell them, okay, this is what it is. It's very easy to do that. So that's why it's so important when you're doing these things or when you're saying these things, to make sure you always say the right thing. So like I said, or rather conspiracy theories have a lot of consequences. And again, the best example for this would be, all these fights that have been happening, or all the violence that people have been facing, simply because they asked other people to wear their masks, or they told people to come into stores with a mask and things like that. So obviously, when you're being asked to follow a very necessary safety precaution, when you're being asked to follow a very, obvious rule that is there within the world, why is it that these people find it, so hard to do something? And that's because they don't believe in these things. And when people try to infringe on your beliefs, when people try to tell you what to do, you get annoyed. And that's why they react in such a way, because they tend to think that what they're doing or what they're saying is correct, or that they can never be wrong. And another thing that we need to understand is, when it comes to conspiracy theories, people don't necessarily believe authorities, or people don't believe governments, simply because they think that these authorities, or the people who are in charge of us, are actually our enemies. And that's obviously because, okay, but it's obviously because, if you look at the way things are being handled all around the world, it would be very hard to place your trust in the government and actually think, hey, our government can get us over this. Because if your government is put you through, or rather put you into this mess in the first place, then can your government actually protect you? So that mistrust, or the fact that we see them as our enemies, or the fact that, people who believe in conspiracy theories see them as their enemies, actually is a huge reason as to why people don't believe in authorities. And the best way to get the message across to people who are anti-vaxxers, who believe in these conspiracy theories, is you need to find people they trust, and then try to spread the message to them through their trusted sources. That's how it works, and that's how it is. But it's time for me to get into a little break, but don't worry, because I'll be back again to tell you about conspiracy theories and anti-vaxxing, and basically how we can solve those problems. Okay, so make sure you stay tuned, but it's time to head into a small break, and I'll be right back.
And it gives them something to look at, and it makes them laugh. It makes them laugh, so that's why I do it.
Oh, and it could be a really good pickup line as well. Ladies who ask, hey, excuse me, so why are you wearing something so colorful? I mean, hey, you can always have something up on your sleeve. I mean, got me thinking, you want to stand out. Why do you want to stand out though so much, especially with these kind of shirts when you're riding? There must be a purpose behind it, right?
Well, when you say a purpose, Nick, what I do, I wear the shirts, mainly, one, because they're nice and bright, so they make me visible, especially if I'm riding on the road.
Okay. Yeah, that's very important, right? Because you want cars, yeah.
Very important. And also, like, people see me in like calves, and perhaps I shouldn't be saying this on here, I suppose, but in the bar afterwards.
All right.
And it gives them something to look at, and it makes them laugh. It makes them laugh, so that's why I do it.
Oh, and it could be a really good pickup line as well. Ladies who ask, hey, excuse me, so why are you wearing something so colorful? I mean, hey, you can always have something up on your sleeve. I mean, you look like a guy who would do.
You know me too well. You know me too well, Nick.
Climb Mount Everest. That is one of that's in my bucket list. You're laughing, but that is the facts right there. I'd love to do that. That is something I'm looking forward to do, hopefully.
Climb Everest.
Mount Everest. I mean, okay, not the very tip of Mount Everest, maybe the base camp at least.
They're talking about mental health. Well, if you went out and got some exercise in the fresh air, that will improve your mental health. It will make you feel better.
That's true. That is true. I wholeheartedly agree. But then for some people, it's how do you find the motivation to, especially when it comes to riding a bicycle, to do it again and again and again and again? It's a cycle that you have to be used to. How do you do it? What makes you wake up in the morning and decide, hey, I'm going to pick my bike up today. I'm going to cycle. What makes you want to do that?
What makes me want to do that?
Yeah. What do you like? What could you give listeners, like people listening in right now? What kind of tip could you give them?
Well, the first tip I would give them, if you haven't tried it before, try it. It can open up new horizons. It will make you fitter. It will definitely make you fitter. Cycling is one of the best forms of aerobic exercise you can do.
It sounds like, I mean, if you think about it, yeah, it sounds like great fun. Because what essentially you're trying to say is also at the same time, when you, if you look at it from this perspective, with regards to mental health, especially when you look at it with mental health, this is another way to fight it. You know, I feel like you go outside, you meet more people, you interact with, you know, socially, you will interact with more people, and you know, you're keeping fit, you're making connections, you're breathing in the good and exhaling the bad. I feel like that's a great thing right there.
Absolutely. Yeah, you got a better way with words than I have, I'll tell you. But you're quite right. What you say there. You're quite right.
I mean, I've been doing this for quite some time. I mean, hey, you'll get the hang of it.
Yeah, I've been doing it for about 10 minutes now, so yeah.
That I can never really understand people staying in one room the whole day when you can have the world to see. I am a traveler. I travel. I love traveling. Traveling is just one of the things I do. And yeah, on top of my bucket list was, you know, to one time, you know, hopefully when I get there, go to Nepal and climb Mount Everest. That is one of that's in my bucket list. You're laughing, but that is the facts right there. I'd love to do that. That is something I'm looking forward to do, hopefully.
Climb Everest.
Mount Everest. I mean, okay, not the very tip of Mount Everest, maybe the base camp at least.
Base camp, yeah.
At least.
Would you be able to cycle there?
Oh.
Hey, it's a chat trap with your girl Sarah. And earlier we were talking about vaccines and whether vaccines. Earlier we were talking about the anti-vax conspiracy, and also we were talking about all these conspiracy theories that are there, and how people are actually getting involved in this a lot, and how governments and authorities are having a hard time dealing with it, and actually being and actually having such a hard time helping populations around the world to get vaccinated, and even get them to believe in the pandemic has been really hard. So we were just debunking some of those conspiracy theories, and I was telling you earlier about why people tend to believe in these conspiracy theories. So obviously, we were talking about that a while back, and you're hanging with me, Sarah. So if you have any thoughts, if you have any opinions, if you have any ideas that you want to share about it with me, you can do so. You can text me on 078-5247-3473, and we can have a little chat about those things as well. Now, if you have any questions, any opinions that you want to put across as well, which you're very welcome to do, make sure you do that, because I'd be so excited to talk to you about it and actually tell you about it. Now, a very good morning to you. A very good morning to you. And I'm super excited to actually be here and tell you about all of this. And it's very important that we talk about this, because these things are currently happening. We need to know how to deal with it. We need to know how to help our governments. We need to know how to help ourselves as well. So it's very important that we talk about this. So right now we're going to be debunking some of those myths, or rather some of those theories that have been around, the anti-vax theories and conspiracy theories that have been around about vaccinations and the pandemic. So the first thing I would like to get into is about whether vaccines, about how vaccines work. Now, a reason that a lot of people don't want to get vaccines, or the reason that a lot of people have a lot of doubts about the vaccines, is simply because they're not aware about how vaccines work. They're not aware how it enters our body, and they're not aware of the side effects and the risks, and they're not aware of that information. And sometimes it's very confusing, because it's not like information isn't freely available everywhere. It's like if you just go on Google and type how do vaccines work, you can find so much of information. But the thing is, maybe it just hasn't reached some people, or maybe there is, I mean, I can't forget the fact that there is a lot of inequality, even when it comes to, being able to access information, right? Even though some of us or most of us can access information, that doesn't mean a lot of people out there can access it. And that's why it's very important that we constantly keep telling people about how vaccines work, how the procedures work, and how we can actually, help ourselves and help everyone else with these with when they have these doubts about vaccines and whatnot, right? So let's get into it, and I'm here to tell you now about how vaccines work. Now, if you're very confused about how vaccines work, if you're confused about whether you should take the vaccine or not, that's fine. It has happened to all of us. Some of us have been there, and the thing is, vaccines aren't new, and anti-vaxxers have been there for a long time. So we'll talk about how vaccines work, because that is very important right now, especially especially with the vaccination drive that is happening in the United Kingdom, and so many people are getting vaccinated, and it's honestly wonderful to see, because the fact that so many people are getting vaccinated, the fact that so many people are open to getting vaccinated is actually a really good sign. So that's something that we can be hopeful about. That is something that we're excited about, and we'll get into it then. So how do vaccines work? Now, there's not actually much science to it. Actually, there is, but I thought I'll explain it the most easiest and simplest way possible so you can understand how vaccines work. So what happens in a vaccine is you basically take a small dose, or you take a small amount of the harmless form of the disease, and you inject it to your body. Now, that's how it works. Now, obviously, the first thing that comes to your mind is, okay, I'm getting injected with a small dose of the vaccine. Does that mean that I am now going to get the disease? No, that is not what happens. It's always important to understand that only a part of the virus is um, a part of the virus is injected into your body. Now, I remember back when I was in school, and we were taught about viruses, we were taught about RNA and DNA, and how viruses worked. You know that, a virus is like a whole cell, or it is a whole structure. What you're doing is you're only injecting a part of that structure into your body. So your body is now aware that when the virus comes into your body next time, or if you get the disease, for example, if you get COVID, your body knows what your body already has those defenses built. Because what happens when you inject a little part, or rather a small part of the virus, is your immune system actually starts reacting to it, and your immune system sees this as a threat. And obviously, when your body sees a virus as a threat, then they start building their defenses, right? Simply think of it as think of your immune system as an army, and think of the virus as this, the enemy army. So obviously, the first thing that the army would do if they spot the enemy is build up their defenses and shoot them and kill them, right? That's how war works, and that's how your body works as well. The moment your immune system sees parts of the virus and sees it, what they do is they build up their immune system, or it builds up your immune system, and it tells them, and it tells the cells in your body how to fight it, just in case you get the virus. So obviously, that is what happens when you're injected with a vaccine. Now, there are different ways in which vaccines are made, but how all vaccines work is through that. Okay, they either they either inject a small part of the disease or part of the virus into your body, or they sometimes even they basically inject these signals. How your body communicates through different signals. So there are different cells or different parts in your body that you can use to communicate these signals. Sometimes they inject those signals, and they somehow send transmissions to your body to tell your body that this is how it should work, just in case this enemy virus comes around. It's really easy, and it's not that hard to understand. But obviously, there's a lot of technicality to it, and I'm not going to get into that, because I want to keep it as simple as possible, so I don't confuse anyone, and I don't confuse myself as well. So that is how a vaccine works. And what it does is it increases our defenses, and it teaches our immune system how to fight it. So then we have the very obvious question of, are vaccines actually safe? Now, that's a very obvious question that would come to your mind if you're getting injected with this vaccine, because the first thing that comes to your head is, am I going to get sick? Is this vaccine actually going to help me, and how it's going to help me, and how safe it is? So I'm going to answer all of those questions, right? Now, the World Health Organization says that that vaccines are actually very safe. And if you don't believe that, well, look back on other instances where we have used vaccines. Okay, and I'm talking about other sicknesses that you use vaccines for. So I'm talking about sicknesses like tetanus, or not tetanus, but the vaccine you give is tetanus. But I'm talking about other sicknesses that you need vaccines for. So when you take those vaccines, for example, like polio, um, those symptoms actually reduce, or when you get the disease, you have a better defense system, because those vaccines actually help you with your protection. Now, that's what it does. So obviously it is very safe, because if anything, what it does, it helps your immunity be more stronger. It gives your body more immunity. And obviously that is something that we want. That is obviously something that we want our bodies to have. We want our bodies to be more immune, which means that, so when we go out, it actually helps us stay strong, and it helps us to be safe from the coronavirus. But what needs to be understood is, just because you get the vaccine, that doesn't mean you're completely immune to the disease. Okay. If anything, what it does is it increases your immunity. Say if your immunity is at 65% now, but after the vaccine, your immunity to that, say, normally without the vaccine, your immunity is about 30%, right? But once you get the vaccine, that means your immunity will now increase, up to 75%, 80%, whatever. It depends on what vaccine you're taking, and it depends on how many doses you take. Now, right now, we have been asked to take 2 doses of whatever vaccine that is there in the world, and I'm talking about the Pfizer vaccine, I'm talking about AstraZeneca, I'm talking about all the vaccines that are there. We've been recommended to take 2 doses of it, right? So obviously that is great news, given the fact that it's helping us build our immune systems, and it's helping us adjust to the virus better. So another thing that obviously needs to be mentioned is that vaccines are so safe that they save between 2 to 3 million lives every year. So, if you don't believe in vaccines helping, other sicknesses, if it helps 2 to 3 million lives per year, I think that is evidence enough for you to believe that vaccines are really helpful. Okay. So it's very important that you get vaccinated. If you've been fully vaccinated, well, congratulations. If you're in the process of being vaccinated, go ahead, get your second dose. And if you still haven't been vaccinated and you're considering being vaccinated, well, go do it. It's really good for your body. And if you don't believe me, you're free to do your own research on it. You're free to talk to professionals. You're free to talk to people who are actually aware of it, and tell you about and talk to you about it. Okay, it's always good to ask questions. It's always completely normal to clarify your doubts before you get a vaccine, so make sure you do that, because that's actually going to really help you. Now let's talk about side effects in vaccines. Right, when it comes to side effects, these are very normal things, and whatever vaccine you take, there will always be side effects. And when I mean side effects, I mean things like a sore arm. For example, when you get vaccinated, when you're, injected on your arm, your arm tends to get sore, and that's normal. And other side effects of the coronavirus vaccines is actually fever, your hands and your joints, or rather your arms and your joints, feeling very sore for a while, feeling drowsy, and feeling very tired. And those are normal things. Now I'll tell you why you feel those side effects, and I'll tell you why you feel feverish and things like that. It's simply because when a little part, or when a little amount of the disease is injected into your body, your immune system starts fighting it the moment it's injected. So obviously the reason we get fevers is because our immune systems are fighting, and because of that, they're emitting a lot of heat. That's why we get fevers, because they're at war, they're trying to protect us. So that's why you get fevers, and that's exactly how vaccines work as well. So you have these side effects. If anything, if you have these side effects, it's actually quite good, because it means that the vaccine is finally taking place, and it's doing what it's supposed to do. So obviously it doesn't mean that something bad is happening. If anything, it is working the way it's supposed to work. So it's very, very important that you that if you have any of these side effects, that it's important that you're not scared. It's important that you know what you're doing, because you are completely going the correct way. And the WHO, or rather the World Health Organization, also makes sure that vaccines are very safe, because there's a strict process it goes through. There's so many testing that is done. There's so much of testing that's done. There's a lot of research that is done to make sure it is in the correct, make sure it's very strict and it's safe for people to consume, and it's good for you to get injected. Okay, so stay tuned, because we'll be back to debunking moments about conspiracy theories, or moments about anti-vaxxers, and so much more. So make sure you stay tuned for that. But it's time to head into a little break, but stay tuned, because I have so much of fun things coming your way
again. But now, if you say to a child, if I went up to a child and said, "You've had one to forget," God, there'd be an inquest. Me, why did you reject my son? Well, I haven't rejected your son.
I want to talk about how the generation gap, how much it's changed, especially when you check the youth nowadays in comparison, to people back in the day.
I'd say when I was younger, it was more disciplined. Not now.
In comparison to now.
Not at all. Not now. The way things are nowadays, the younger generation, you seem that they can't accept the word no, if that makes sense. They can't
accept rejection, essentially, is all you're trying to say.
Yeah, they can't accept the word no. So if you, how did I do? Or you didn't do very well, and they get upset, And when I was a youngster, my father used to say to me, because I used to be sport mad when I was very young. Well, I still am sport mad, but like participating in different sports. And if I had a bad game, for example, he might say to me, "You had one to forget." That's it.
Your dad sounds like a smart guy. I mean, yeah, that's the real fact of the matter, yeah.
He'd say to me, "You had one to forget. Get over it." And that was it. So I dust myself down and do it again. But now, if you say to a child, if I went up to a child and said, "You've had one to forget," God, there'd be an inquest. Me, why did you reject my son? Well, I haven't rejected your son. Or daughter. I've just told them that they need to buck their ideas up.
That's the truth right there. I mean, if you think about it, if you check the generations, like right now in the US as well, I've seen a lot of these things as well. In the UK, you get medals for participation. But what's the point? What are you trying to? Yeah, what's the point? Either you win or you lose. People are so afraid to put that whole notion of losing. When it comes to right now, the generation gap is just crazy. How much a lot has changed. Social media has taken control of our lives, and we don't even realize it anymore. We're crippled because of it.
That's absolutely right, Nick. Because, as you said, nowadays it seems that you get rewarded for failure. For the life of me, Nick, I can't get my head around that. Perhaps I'm just getting old and morbid. I don't know. I just can't get my head around how you could be rewarded for failure.
Hey, it's Sarah on Relax Radio right here on the chat trap. And we are discussing conspiracy theories and we're debunking myths on anti vaccination and so much more because it is very important that we do that, especially given given the present situation, right? So earlier we were talking about vaccines and whether it's actually safe to get vaccines and how vaccines work. And now I'll be actually talking about anti vax because that is a myth we need to debunk as well. It's not necessarily a myth, but it is something that we need to debunk as well. So if you're anti vax and you're watching this, well, I hope I am able to convince you and make you understand why you need to make sure that well, you need to make sure that everything you do is correct, and why you need to take the correct steps to actually make sure that not only you but your friends, your family, and everyone is actually safe. Okay, so what happens in or if you're just listening in, I'm going to explain this to you right now. But also, before I get into that, if you have any messages, thoughts, opinions that you would like to share, please go ahead, do that. You can just text me on 078 or you could just even comment on our live videos, which is on Facebook, which is on Facebook and YouTube, and all the other live broadcasts that we have. And you can also follow us on our socials, that is Instagram, YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, and even TikTok. Okay, and I also had a few comments earlier that said that this conversation was helping a lot of people understand helping a lot of people understand the pandemic, helping a lot of people understand how there's a lot of misinformation, how why we need to make sure we are absorbing the correct information and telling people the correct information, and also why we need to make sure that we are telling people the truth. And I'm so happy and I'm so excited and glad that it helped you, because that was honestly what I wanted to do. I wanted to make sure that I was able to help people understand all these conspiracy theories and all these things about about the anti-vax movement, and help people understand why it's very important to be able to see objectively. Okay, but let's get into it. And we're talking about anti-vax and what exactly is it and how does it work. Okay, so that's obviously a few questions that we all have. What is it, how does it work, what kind of impact has it had? So obviously when you say anti-vax, it's pretty easy. It's anti-vaccination. Vax is just a shorter form you use for vaccination, and anti-vax means you're against vaccines. And what that means is you essentially see vaccines as something bad, something that's inherently detrimental to everyone, and something that isn't going to help the future, or rather help communities and help people. And why they sort of see this as a bad thing is because they believe it's dangerous, and they think that it will harm people, and make people be unable, or rather make people unable to control their lives and everything that is happening in them. That is one of the most common beliefs when it comes to anti-vaccination. And because they want to protect their families and themselves, they try to stay away from vaccinations as much as possible. And they also spread the idea and tell other people as well that it's not good to get vaccinated, that getting vaccinated has a lot of issues, and that you probably shouldn't get yourself vaccinated. And that is what anti-vaxxing is about. So obviously, because that's what it's about, and that's what people are trying, anti-vax believers are trying to tell other people and trying to get people in anti-vax. It's very important that we try to address this. So recently I saw this video about this lady who used to live, or rather who lives in the United Kingdom, who used to be anti-vax. And she said one of the main, or rather a few reasons as to why she was anti-vax was essentially because she was brought up in one of those environments. Her mother was, a hardcore anti-vaccination person, if I may, if that's the correct, way to say it. But her mother was completely against vaccinations, and her mother also, made sure that they didn't get vaccinations as well. And she herself used to be against vaccines. She herself used to make sure that, if she went out, if she was meeting new people, to always make sure and tell them that, vaccinations are bad. Sometimes you casually have conversations about these things. Like, for example, me and my friends, we always talk about the current world. We talk about politics. We're always talking about different things. So when you're casually having that kind of conversation, she said that she mentioned to a lot of people that she was anti-vax, and how she also, help people understand, or rather, made people become anti-vax. And she herself said that after a while she realized that there was something wrong with it, because it takes so much of people to actually spread misinformation, right? It takes a certain group to believe in anti-vaccination efforts. It takes a certain group to actually talk about it and tell people about it. So obviously, when it comes to anti-vaccination and everything, she was in that interview, she was actually telling the person who was interviewing her that there was a lot of harm that was caused to her because of it. But she said she's also a very curious person. So while she's on the internet, or while she's on social media, she started noticing these little things that weren't necessarily consistent, right? um she started noticing how a lot of these anti-vax movements had this one group of people, or they had this like specific source that would always bring up these conspiracy theories and bring up these notions and ideas against vaccination. And she said that it was always that same group of people. And because and she said another reason why it was so easy for people to actually believe in these conspiracy theories, to actually understand or come to terms with why it's happening, is simply because another reason is simply because, the level of education. Now, not everyone is as educated, because obviously when it comes to education as well, there is a lot of inequality, and it's not something that everyone can afford. And even if they can afford it, it's not like everyone can afford university, and doing your basic degree, doing your masters, getting a doctorate. It's quite expensive. Like I've said so many times before, it's quite expensive to be alive. So obviously, because of that, not a lot of people can afford a really good education. And because of that lack of education as well, it's very obvious as to why there's so many theories and there's so many opinions about these against vaccines and against the pandemic, and basically how it doesn't exist and how it's all just fake and it's not real. So obviously, that is why those things exist. And when it comes to this whole effort of trying to reduce misinformation, when it comes to dealing with anti-vaccination efforts and whatnot, it's actually quite hard. So earlier I was talking about that interview, and she was saying that because of that, it took her years and years to actually to get herself to stop thinking like that, to get herself to stop thinking that vaccinations were a bad thing. And it took her so much of time to actually stop believing that that these conspiracy theories were real. And she said now that she's a changed person, that she's learning about these efforts, and she's learning about how things need to change. And because of that, she said that she's spending all her time trying to educate people who are anti-vaxxers, trying to educate people who are huge believers of these conspiracy theories, about why they need to basically stop believing some of the things they believe in. And she said that it takes a lot of work, that it's very hard to convince someone why they're wrong. And obviously that's very human, because you never want to be told why you're wrong, right? Because we tend to think we're always right, we always want to be right. That's a very human quality. But that is what it is. So if you actually look at this in the perspective of people who are against vaccines, you should be able to understand them, because one of the sole reasons for doing this, or the sole reason they do it, is actually because they're scared and they want to be protected and they want to be safe. And like I said, just like how you and I have so many concerns, you and I have so many thoughts about being vaccinated, and we have so many fears and so many uncertainties about being vaccinated. It's the same for these people, right? There are so many people out there who make fun of them. There are so many people out there who are constantly making jokes about them. But the sad reality is, or what we really need to understand, is that these people are also, they're also going through something. They're finding it hard. They're worried for their families. They're worried for themselves. And they themselves are experiencing a whole lot of emotions. So, if you're out there, you have people, or if you know people who are anti vax and you're trying to explain it to them, probably the best way to do that is not to make fun of them. No one wants to be ridiculed. No one likes that. So, if you're going to educate them, if you're going to tell them that, then the best way to probably do that is by telling them, hey, this is what it is. This is how you change it. This is what you can do, and this is why what you're believing doesn't actually make sense. Okay, now let's talk about now, since we spoke about the anti-vax population and why they think the way they do, let's talk about what governments around the world, and not only here but governments around the world, are doing to actually tackle this problem. So obviously, when it comes to misinformation, when it comes to COVID-19, when it comes to the pandemic, obviously this is a very serious concern. This a concern about misinformation, this concern about other things. It's very serious, and obviously governments themselves have a hard time dealing with it. And when I say, they have a hard time dealing with it, that's actually, first of all, it's because they need, like I said earlier, people who are part of this anti-vax movement, people who believe in conspiracy theories, essentially with the government, they essentially see authorities as something, as their enemies, or they see them as something they don't trust. So obviously, when a certain part of the people, you have to take care of, don't believe in you, or don't trust in you, or there's a lot of mistrust that is there, it's obviously very hard then to get the message across to them, because you need to make sure they believe in you, but also make sure that you get the message across to them. So it's very, very hard, if you think about it, to try to dissolve these images, or dissolve these notions they have about anti-vaccination, being anti-vax and all of that. So what governments are doing, obviously, is just trying ways to find, or trying to find ways to battle misinformation. And now, a very good example of this is actually how social media like Facebook, Twitter, Instagram have this fact checking mechanism, right? And I've seen this because I follow a lot of pages that have conspiracy theories as well, but that doesn't mean I believe in them. It's interesting to read about it. It's interesting to see someone else's standpoint. It's very interesting to see how other people analyze things and see the world. But I've seen like so many memes or even posts have these have this little, it's like a clickable window where it says, fact checkers have said that this is wrong, fact checkers are saying this is false information, and this is false, right? And it's not only Instagram, so many other social media platforms like Facebook, Twitter actually take away some of their or they reduce the amount of things you can do from your account if you are constantly spreading misinformation and fake news, if I may. um and obviously that was a very, that's a very obvious case when it came to Donald Trump, because he got banned from Twitter, Facebook, basically every social media account, simply because he was spreading a lot of misinformation. So obviously, when it comes to misinformation, and um when it comes to misinformation, and when it comes to handling people who believe in this conspiracy theories, and who believe um, in the anti-vaccination movement, it's very, very important that we actually make sure that we know how to handle them. Okay, we know how to tell them what to do when it comes to tackling them. It's very, very important that we understand what kind of mindset they have, and we try to understand and get the message across to them. That is one of the main concerns. So to sum up everything I said, right, to everything, to sum up everything I said a while back, this whole topic, it was very interesting and it was honestly fun to talk about. I was so excited to talk about it. I was so excited to educate you and tell you about how vaccines work, whether it's safe to get vaccinated, the anti-vax movement, these conspiracy theories, and even a lot of the misinformation that was being spread currently, especially in the middle of a pandemic. So obviously it's very important that we spoke about these things, because it's currently happening. A lot of us are experiencing it and we don't know what to do. So because of that, it was very important and it was good that we spoke about it today, and I'm so happy that it helped a lot of you understand what it feels like to go through all of this. But stay tuned, because I have something special for you coming up next. I will be back in a few more minutes. But obviously, stay tuned, because next we're going to be talking about if COVID-19 is the only pandemic in the United Kingdom. Okay, and I think that is something that's very important, something that needs to be talked about a lot, especially because there are a whole lot of other problems that everyone is facing as well. So stay tuned for that. But it's time for me to take that little break I was talking about and get back to you on if COVID-19 is the only pandemic in the United Kingdom.